All right, so, and I'm going to do a save as for my text file. I'm going to change its type to text so it won't end it with the py extension. And I'm going to call it test.txt. Doesn't matter what you call it as long as you remember its name long enough to come and type it over here. So now we're going to write a function that will open that file or open any file. It'll launch any file. And in a matter of fact, it should be able to open executables as well as documents. So we need to get from the operating system library some good stuff. Import OS. Now, if I wanted to be precise, I could do from OS import path. And from, right, anyways, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to live with the fact that I'm going to have to prefix all my commands with OS. And I kind of like the way, I'm sorry, I have the hiccups. That's not so good. Alrighty, so I need a variable which represents my local directory. And I'm going to call it mypath. And the way we get our local directory, whatever directory we are running in, is with an operating system call called get CWD, which stands for current working directory. And we're going to use that. Now, if we try to open a file, like let's just say that we write a function called file open, and it takes a file name, and we do something with it. Right now, it doesn't do anything, so I'm just going to make it return. But if we did that, if we tried to call that, and there was no file there with that name, then we'd want to note that that was not the case, that we couldn't do it. We want to print an error or something to that effect. So we're going to write a function that checks to see if a string that is passed it actually is a valid file name. So we're going to call this is_file, and it takes a file name. Now there is a function called is.path.isFile. But I want to make it so that whatever our path was, we will be able to check it. So that if something else changed our path, like if we had some way of checking our path to go to the root of the drive, C:\/ or something like that. So we're going to do something called, well, for now, let me return that one as well. Let's play with this join command I'm just about to use. If you had a file named test.txt, right? And then we wanted to fully qualify it, meaning add the entire path to it. Then I'm going to do f is equal to os.path.join. And yet again, there we go. At least I caught it that time. mypath, comma, file name. And what does os.path.join do? It just combines the directory path with the file path. And yeah, couldn't you just append one to the other? Yeah, but it takes care of the niceties, like maybe your file path had a backslash at the end of it or a / or whatever. It just formats it nicely. Let's print it out just to see what it does. Now I'm going to probably just wind up nuking that stuff in a minute or commenting it out, but and so we see that this is my current working directory from there to there, and that's my file that I'm going to try to open. So we're going to use that os.path.join to build an entire path. Now, if we wanted to be really clever, we would check the path being passed for it, and if there were already backslashes in it or /, we would not join it. We would assume that it was already a good file name. As a matter of fact, we should check for backslashes too, because Windows users tend to type in file names with backslashes, whereas Linux and Mac users type them with forward slashes. Forward slashes work on Windows as well. So let's get to it. Let's check to see whether our file name even has backslashes or forward slashes in it, because if it doesn't, then we can blow it off. I mean, we can blow off joining it, right? So if there is a forward slash in our file name, or there's a backslash. Now I'm going to have to put 2 backslashes there, I believe. I'll demonstrate why in a second. In the file name, then it's good. We don't need to change the file name. I'm just going to use the word pass there. What pass means is do absolutely nothing. Else, we need to join it. F is equal to os.path.join mypath, comma, the file name. And then let's print out what we've got so far, right? Just so that we can test out our module. Print is file, end quote, comma, F. And get rid of these things for now, although that test.txt is okay, but get rid of those things for now. Now I'm going to try my isFile function, and I'm going to pass in, a file name that has a slash, and then a file name that doesn't. So for example, this file doesn't have a file. Doesn't have any slashes in it, so it's not a fully qualified path. Fully qualified is just a fancy term for one including the directory specifications. And then we're going to call it again with one that does, right? Now, this is a Mac, so it doesn't have a C drive, but I'm going to go ahead and do that anyways, just so it looks familiar, right? There we go. And then lastly, let's do it the other way. All right, so why in the world am I putting double slashes everywhere? We've talked about this a while back. Whoops, didn't mean to put it there. You know what \n does, right? If I printed this out, C:\n, what's it going to do? It's going to print the words C:, and then the \n is going to go to the next directory. It means new directory, new line, right? So when I run this, if it doesn't crash, if it actually runs, right, it just printed out C:, because the \n is a new line, right? Goes to the next line, just like \t is a tab, and there are some other control characters. So that's why we add 2 backslashes. It tells the character that, oh, you're not really an escape sequence that's supposed to print out a new line or a tab or anything. You really are just a slash, right? And so then it prints out C:\n. See what I mean? So that's why I'm checking for double backslashes, because when you're specifying file paths, if you did it that way, you'd need to put in double slashes. All right, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to run it again and make sure my is file currently working. All right, so the first time we did not specify a path, and so it includes our current working directory. And the second time it did, and the third time it did. So all good. Well, obviously just building that path isn't enough, but that was just to test it out. What do we need to do? We need to check to see if it's actually there. So let's try to see if it's there. There's a command called isFile. Now, is file doesn't validate only the existence of the file, but that it's not a directory, right? Because you can have files and directories in the same folder. And so we're trying to make absolutely sure that what we open is a file, because what if they passed in a directory name instead? So if os.path.isFile, parentheses F, well, then it's a file. So colon return true. Otherwise, just return false. Now, honestly, if you ever have something like this, you don't have to do an if something return true, else return false. You could just do this. Return os.path.isFile F. That's it. That's all you need to do, because this thing returns true or false. So there's no reason to see if this returned a true and then turn around and return a true if we could just return the results of that. So I'm going to go ahead and do it that way. Delete those 3 lines. Siri, I didn't talk to you. I need to just, alrighty, there you go. So we need to pass in a good file name and see if that's going to work, right? But we're going to need to store the results in a variable, because if we return a value and we don't store its results, then it's lost. So OK is equal to is_file, parentheses, quote, test.txt, end quote, in parentheses, and then print OK, just so I can see whether it's true or false. It ought to be true, because I know that I made that file. Or it's not anything. Yeah, why don't we get rid of that colon there? And it's true that that file is there. Let's change it to something that doesn't exist, like if I tacked on a 2 there. And that's not there. Okay, that's working. That's goodness. What was our original goal? To be able to open a file. Well, we had to validate that the file existed. So let's go ahead and write a function that opens files. Except I called it file open. Don't know why. All of a sudden, I feel like writing it, calling it open file instead. def open underscore file, parentheses F. That's going to be his file name. I could give it a better name, because a more techie name than open file, because that makes it sound like we're going to open it for reading, and we're actually going to try to launch it as an operating system command. So I'm going to change the name of this to run process. Process is just one of the things that are working, one of the programs that are running. Like if I come over here and, well, now I can't find it. My activity monitor, process name. This is a list of all my programs that are currently running. They call them processes. So what we're going to do here is we're going to validate that whatever's passed in really is a file. Right? So if is_file, parentheses F, not equal to true, colon, then return false. And we could print a message that it's not a valid file, right? We don't really need this print message anymore. Now, if you're ever checking to see if something is not equal to true, you could just use the word not instead. If not is file, then let's print a message. Print F, comma, quote, is not a file, end quote, in parentheses, and return false. Otherwise, let's try to get it going. We're going to join the path. So we're going to do f equals os.path.join. No way. I now wish that this code was inside of a function of its own, because I'm writing it again down here. For now, I guess I'm just going to copy and paste it, but it irks me to do that. I should put it in its own function. But anyway, so I'm taking these 4 lines here and I'm pasting them here. All right, so now we have a good file path, a fully qualified file path. And we're going to try to open it. We need to import one more library that I should have done up at the top. So up here, I'm almost tempted to just import it right on the spot here. From subprocess, or how about just import subprocess? Import subprocess, sub process. And now we're going to try to run it. So we need to build a command that we're going to pass in. And this is a little bit weirder than it was when we were doing the notepad.exe to open it. But on the other hand, it's been a long time since we've done that anyways. So here's our command. We're going to put it inside a list. And the first command is the word open. And the second command is our file name. And now we're going to run that command. Run that command and check equals true. I don't even know what that does. I could Google it up, or I could just accept that it worked the last time I did it. It probably checks to see whether it was successfully launched. Subprocess run Python check. If check is true and the process exits with a non-zero exit code, a call to process error exception will be raised. I don't know. Doesn't sound like something I need to do. I mean, it's supposed to validate that it was successfully run or not. But I'm not going to check it, so to speak. Oh, I'll just leave it there. We've done enough qualification on it that it shouldn't crash. But let's check that already. And if we get this far, then we're going to return, right? Now, it is true that you can crash if you try to open something, probably because I set that check equals true. So if I try to do this, run underscore process, and I type in a file name that doesn't exist, and I had this part of it commented out so we didn't have our safety check, then I just want you to see it blow up. I want you to see the crash that causes, subprocess.run. Subprocess.run. Just had to change that. All right, and it blew up, right? We got our crash. We've seen our crash before. It's been a long time since we talked about it, but there's a way to make these things kind of crash proof. And what you do is you enclose your code that's liable to crash in a try block like this. So I'm going to come up here, and before, well, it doesn't matter whether it's before or after. Before my import statement, I'm adding something new. I'm adding the block try, right? The keyword try. So I just added that. I'm going to tab these guys over. But if it blows up, if an exception is raised, an exception is one of the exceptional circumstances where we get a runtime error. So we put except : and if that happens, then it means it failed. So we want to make this return true if it launched successfully. But if not, we want to return a message that says that it didn't. And we may as well print an error message at that same time, right? F comma quote cannot be run for whatever purposes. File doesn't exist or whatever. And then we can return that. And there we go, right? Could not be run. And we need to stick the word error in front of it, right? There we go. All righty. Now I don't want that to happen, so I am going to go back and put my validation code back in. So now I've uncommented that stuff out, so it's back into action. And now when we run process, we're not going to get this error message. We're just going to get this one that is not a file. All right, doesn't exist is not a file. All right, any questions over what we've done so far with these two modules here? Shouldn't call them modules, I should call them functions. I'm not teaching fundamentals right now. All right, hope that makes sense. All right, lastly but not leastly, let's try to open up our actual file. And it worked. What is that? What file name did I use? Oh, I used text.txt. And the one I created was called test.txt. Let's try that. This is my test. Okay, so it's working. It's opening the file using whatever the editor that is registered on my operating system. On Windows, it would be Notepad most likely. But if it was a DOC file, it would launch Word. Let's see if there are any DOC files in that directory. Well, there's certainly a PowerPoint file. There's PNG files, right? Anyways, here's a DOC file. Let's see if I can get that file name. And I've got a problem, and I wonder what the file is, the problem is. Has something to do with this check here? Maybe I should just let try except handle all problems. Well, I'm just going to go on from here and hope that it starts working. It did work for our txt file. So I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to go ahead and uncomment these again. All right, what's next? What do I want to do now? I want to use the operating system to give me a list of files in that directory. And then after we do all that fun stuff, we're going to go and make a user interface that'll display a list of files in the operating system so that we could click on one and choose open and it would launch it. That's where we're going with this. So let's write a function that'll get a list of files. So how about that? We got a little bit of documentation there. Yeah, that's irking me. Oh well, hope it works. So what's next? We're going to do a get files function, which will return a list of files. Since that didn't work, I'm going to comment that out. I mean, even if it did work, I'd comment it out because it's not part of what we're trying to do right now. So if we do this, files equals os.listdir parentheses mypath, and then we print files, we're going to see a whole bunch of files just because I have this program saved, excuse me, in a download directory that everything I download goes to. There they are, right? All the files in that directory, but there are some subdirectories in it too. So I would want to winnow that down. So let's write a function that'll do that. Define get files. And we should make it take a path rather than use that mypath global variable. Just because we might want to make this so generic that we could copy and paste it in another program and it wouldn't need that path. I don't know why I'm changing my mind about doing that now than I was earlier. So yeah, I'll just stick with what I was doing. Okay. So let's get our list of files. But that list of files contains directories as well, and we want to filter those out. Fortunately, we have something called is_file that we can use. Now, there's a long way and a short way we could do it, right? We could do this, files only equals, and declare an empty list, right? And then we could do for every value in files, if is underscore file, that value, then append it to files only. Or we could use list comprehension, which is one line of code. So that looks like this. Files only equals, and then we put our list declarators here. Value in files if is underscore file value. So that replaces these 4 lines. And that's going to return everything. What if I wanted to narrow it down to like a specific extension? I only want docx files or something like that. Well, we could allow ourselves to pass in a file extension. But if they don't specify an extension, we're just going to set it equal to an empty string, right? So we have a default value here so that we don't have to pass in an extension. But if one is used, then we'll do it. All right, so now we need to winnow out everything that doesn't have an extension, a matching extension. And isn't there an ends with command? Python string ends with. Yeah, what do you know? It's called ends with. Woot, that'll work perfectly. All righty, so file only is equal to the value in files only if the value dot ends with our extension. But we only want to do that check if there really is an extension, right? It's not empty. So if extension not equal quote, quote, colon, right, with no spaces between it, then rebuild our file only list, only allowing the ones that end with our extension. At this point, we should have a good extension, a good file list, and so we can return that. There's some slim chance that this is going to work. Files equals get underscore files, and then let's print files. And it's going to be nice and long again. But then I'm going to try passing in an extension, and it should be shorter. Why is that a syntax error?
PyCharm is saying there's a problem with extension.
On this one?
Yeah, it says unresolved reference extension. And then underneath it says import this name. So
okay. I did go back and add that extension reference here.
Oh, okay. I did not see that.
Yeah. Well, what if arg?
Okay, now that's gone.
All of a sudden, this if syntax isn't working today when it was working for me last night.
For that, it's saying unresolved reference B.
Oh, no, that's. Oh, I see what I'm doing. I see what I'm doing. I see what I'm doing. My mistake. So V, for every V in the files list, if is underscore file v, parentheses v, into parentheses colon. So that, I forgot the for syntax there, and I'm going to have to add that down here.
Yep. Now it's all
Yeah.
checked.
So return v for v in files only if that ends with extension. That should correct it. You're going to make me cry. Ah, space. There we go. All right. Too large, right? But let's try passing in an extension. See if this works. I only want PDF files. How about doc files? I only want docx files. Still too many, but anyways. All righty, so we have a way of getting a list of files. And just for our sake, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it only print the first 10 files, right? So if the length of the files list is greater than 10 colon, then files equals files 0 colon 10. Just give me the first 10 files. This is just to stop our display from being so cluttered, right? I mean, it's not really legit to do that, but looks better, right? I thought I had an extension there, and it's returning everything.
Yeah, mine too is also just returning everything .text, .py, .pdf.
Well, we could blow off the extension check. Or I could rewrite this. This is not a good way to do it. If extension n v, and I'm going to actually pass in the period as well. Let's see if that improves it. Not a bit. And again, this is something that worked perfectly last night. I've almost copied it word for word from my testing last night. All right. I thought that that was going to be an adequate way of doing it, but we're going to write an extension that checks to see if the file being tested actually matches the extension passed in. So, new one. Match extension, taking a file name, we need to get the extension. Well, we can get the extension using a function within the os.path. So extension is equal to os.path.split ext, which means split it into a file name and an extension, f in parentheses. Now, when it does that, it's going to come back in the form of a file name, comma, extension, and I don't care so much about that file name. I just want the extension. So I'm going to say ext equals ext subscript 1. Which is subscript 0. So now we have an extension. So if we don't have an extension at all, we can't match it, right? So if len ext in parentheses equals 0 colon return false, false with a capital F. Now let's check to see if our extensions, if they did not pass in any extensions, we can return true, right? Because if they don't specify an extension, then everything matches it. So if extensions equals that, and let's also allow an asterisk as an extension, or extensions equals that, asterisk just means everything, then return true. Now, lastly, we've ruled out those kind of dummy conditions. We can actually do the check, right? So if the extension we got is in our extensions list or string, then we can return true, else we return false. And we're going to need to test that. So down here, I'm going to do OK is equal to match underscore extensions. And I'm going to match the file name, puppy.jpg, end quote, comma. First, let's match it to asterisk, and that should be true. And I'm going to stick an input statement in there just to pause it so that we don't have to see the rest. Now, there's probably a syntax error in there. Oh, excuse me, plural. I don't know why I singularized that, but made that plural. I know why, though, is because I made this support multiple extensions. You could pass in PDF and doc or something like that. So I'm going to change that to S. I just changed that to make it match that. All right, and so puppy did match the asterisk. However, is puppy a DOC file? Intentions. I like that. Let's print out that extension anyways. Let's just see what it is. Temporarily, I'm going to add a print statement in here. And I'm also going to correct that typo. All right, and it didn't match puppy. Okay, all well and good. I think this is working. Can we pass in two extensions and have it pass them, pass the check, right? Is it a DOC file or is it a JPEG? Oh, come on. And it should have matched that. Oh, I know why. It's because it's looking for things with periods, and the extensions I passed in do not have periods. Do I fix that by adding periods or by stripping the period from that? Well, in the interests of not lingering over this part of it entirely. All right, it matched that. Okay. I wonder if that was my problem all along. All right, that function seems to be working. I'm going to get rid of my print statement. And I'm going to go back down to get files. Files only is equal to V. Oh, I see what I did wrong. You see that and that? Is there a difference between those two? How about I put the S there? All righty. But I've already written this long function, so I may as well use it. So in files only, if match underscore extensions that value against the extension passed in. We don't need this code anymore. We have tested that function. V is not defined, says who. That's supposed to be if, excuse me. All righty, and it is working. I have 2 DOC files in there. So let's print them out in a prettier format and offer the user to open one of them, right? I think I'll just call this menu because I'm not coming up with a more clever name for it right now. Let's get that, but instead of just printing them out as a big long list like that, let's use a for loop. So for every v in files colon print parentheses quote file colon end quote comma v, and then let's get our input. F equals input parentheses quote open which file question mark end quote in parentheses, and then let's try to open it. I've already forgotten what our open function was called. Run process. Run underscore process F. And we need to call our menu, our file launching menu. All righty, this is the file that I want. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it down here. And it launched the Word document. Okay, that's cool. That took a little longer than I wanted, but we have some good code here that we could use in our graphical user interface. So now we got to switch gears and start working on the graphical user interface. We don't need this menu code anymore, so I'm going to comment this out. And I'm going to comment why we did this here. This is just a cheap hack, just for testing. Limit the list to 10. You wouldn't do that in real life, right? You come up with some other solution. Okay, so we're going to be doing some TK-INTER stuff. Put a comment here as to what we're doing. Get a list of. It's really bugging me that we're not passing the path in. If I wanted to pass the path in, then I would need to come down here, and when we call get files, I could specify a path, my path, or I could specify C:, something like that. C:/ to get it to go. So forgive me for making one more change, which is Siri. I'm going to modify get files up here to accept a path parameter. But if they don't specify a path, we're going to just use the default. And so down here, we're going to pass in mypath as the value of the path that we're searching. Or we could just pass in empty, and it would go ahead and just use the default. but I'm changing it to mypath. So I've added the mypath parameter here. Just made that change. I made this change. And then lastly, I ought to swap these because the file name, the extensions is more important than the path, perhaps. I'm not going to bother. However, this needs to now just be path. So I just changed that. Changed it from mypath to path. Alrighty. Now I need to test this menu call after all because I just made some changes to it. I need to make sure it worked as well as it did before. All right, and it did. It listed all the Word docs. Very good. Just in case I ever want to use this function again, I want it to be flexible enough so that I can specify a directory name, a folder name, and it would get all the files out of that folder.
One moment, I'm just trying to read through everything real fast, make sure I got it. I'll let change this down.
And since we don't need this block here anymore, I'm going to delete those 4. They're kind of cluttering up the middle of the function. I think I kept y'all here like an extra 30 minutes on Tuesday. I think I kind of brain glitched and just kept going on until 12:40. All right, Jason, is it working for you now, or are you getting did my last change break?
Yeah, I think it was working because I did, since I don't have the puppy file, I had to do like just a text file that started
Oh, sure.
with mypath. And
Right.
that passed back true. That was, yeah, so it's not crashing, but I don't think I've called the menu function yet. So I have to just kind of see if that works. But that's something I can do probably after class if it breaks.
Okay, so now we're going to write our TK enter interface.
Yeah, because now I'm getting an error. When I called menu, I didn't pass a menu for anything. It came back with 3 different errors. We'll fix that later.
So from TK INTER import asterisk, and I'm going to use the grid this time rather than the pack. So I'm not going to use frames. So let's get our window. Win is equal to capital T, lowercase k, parentheses, in parentheses. We could set the geometry of it. 800, quote, 800x 800. Well, it's probably far too large. Underneath here, I'm going to actually call the GUI. Let's just see how big that window is. I've got my parentheses. Define GUI parentheses in parentheses colon. All right, that's huge. Did it need to be so large? Not really. Okay, cool. Now let's make our list box, but let's add a quit button to the very top of it. If this destroy function is called, all it does is call win.destroy. And that's what our quit button is going to do. So this is the first row. We need a new button. V1 is equal to button. Attach it to Windows, so parentheses win. The text equals quote quit, end quote, comma, and the command equals destroy. And now we need to add it to our grid. b1.grid row equals 0, comma, column equals 0. Let's see how that looks. All right, now we have a quit, and if I click it, it closes it. Now, how about a list box? Let's make a list box full of our files. So we're going to need to talk about list boxes just a little bit. What is a list box? It's just a, you know what a list box is. It's a list on screen of things that you can click. So for demonstration purposes, colors is equal to quote, red, end quote, comma, quote, blue, end quote, comma, quote, green, end quote. And now I'm going to build a list box from that list. So I need to make a string var that contains that list of color. So color underscore list equals capital S string var, parentheses, in parentheses, and then color underscore list equals, color dot list dot set based on our colors. And then make a list box based on that. So list box 1 equals list box attached to our window and our list variable listvar equals color underscore list. And I forgot to add it to the grid. So list box 1 dot grid, let's put it below the quit button. Row equals 1, comma, column equals 0. Right? Here we go. And let's add an open button down here that'll open one of these things. Of course, we're going to go back in and fill these in with file names, right? Right now that there's short things, but we can get a list of files. We don't have to set it equal to colors. Now I kind of wish I had chosen something else other than colors, right? I'm going to nuke those 3 lines because I'd rather make them files. Right, files is equal to get underscore files, parentheses, let's just accept the generic path, and you can pick your file extension or pass in nothing if you want to see all your files. I happen to know I have 8,000 different PowerPoints, so I'm going to use those. .pptx, end quote, in parentheses, or are they just .ppt? Now I don't remember. Let's go look. Oh, they're not going to even tell us the file name extension. Well, I guess I'll find out if it comes back with nothing. So there we go. Let's make our file list, or our file, a string var, parentheses, in parentheses, and then file list dot set based on our files list. And then we have to change this from color list to file list. So I only have 2 pptx files, and yet it's called .ppt. That's bizarre. What if it was just ppt? Would it match more? Oh, that's probably true. I was thinking of PDFs. I know I have 1 million PDFs and only a couple PowerPoints. That's okay. So I changed that to .pdf on mine. You could make it .py, you can make it .txt, whatever you want. Okay, so I have a bunch of files, and I bet that they're too long, too many of them to fit in here. That would be my guess, but I don't know. Let's remove all extensions entirely, or make that asterisk, because that looks cool. There we go. And it's getting everything right. And it's limited to a certain length, but we can scroll up and down and see them all. That'd be neat if it had a scroll bar, right, or something like that, but good enough. We have a cute little scrolling list now of all of our files. So what happens if a file is selected? If you double click on it, nothing happens. I think you can bind the list to an event so that if it's double clicked, it's processed. However, I did not look into that. So I'm just going to add an open button down here at the bottom. So let's make another button. But we're going to have to make a function that uses what was specified. So I'm going to call this open click. And for now, it's not going to do anything. So I'm just going to, I mean, I could just put the word print, you know, clicked. That pass just means do absolutely nothing. It's just a statement there. Whenever you need a statement, but don't care what it does. It does nothing. All right, so let's make our new button. B2 equals button with a capital B. Attach it to our window. So when, comma, text equals quote, open file, end quote, comma, command equals open underscore click in parentheses. And we need to put it on the grid. And it's going to go in row 2. b2.grid row equals 2, comma, column equals 0. All right, so how do we figure out what was selected? When we created our list box, we even could have made it so that you could select on multiples of them by holding the shift key down. I didn't do that, but you could. So when we click on our file, we need to get our current list of selected items in the list box. And you do that by calling something called cur selection, C-U-R, like current, selection, the whole word selection. So items in the list, items equals, and our list box is called LB1, LB1 dot cur, C-U-R, selection, parentheses in parentheses. And let's just print the items out. That'll be enough to prove whether it's working or not, right? So if I select that one and I click open file, it should have printed something down here. And what does it return? It's returning a tuple, which is kind of like a list, except it's immutable. It can't be changed. So it has parentheses around it rather than square braces, where the first element in it is the row number that was selected. So I can get that item number based on this tuple, right? So the item that was selected equals the first element in that list. It's actually a tuple, but a tuple and a list are kind of the same, except that a tuple can't be changed. You can't modify the values in it like you can a list. So let's print out the item to see whether I got that right. Right, there we go. It didn't get it out right. Oh, because I didn't actually use the list, right? We have a list of files called files, And so I need to print out the files at that item. So I just changed that so that I specify our list of files. And it worked, right? When I click it, it is returning the name of which one was selected. That almost sounds like it ought to be its own function. It's already working. I'm not going to change it. But this stuff should be put into its own function. And what happens if you click it and nothing is selected? Let's find out. Blows up. Oh, well. All right, so if the item list is empty, we don't want to do anything. And what we really should do is step through everything in the items list with a for loop. So I'm going to change this just a little bit and then say for v in items : item equals v subscript 0, and then print files subscript item in subscript. Now that would work whether they select nothing or whether they select multiple objects. Probably wouldn't take too long to find out how to make it select multiple objects. Listbox, Python, multiple items, multiple selection. Select mode equals multiple. Is that going to do it? Select mode equals quote multiple. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work, I'll punt. So here's where we create our list box. We're going to add a parameter to this. This is the line that I'm changing. Selection equals quote multiple end quote. Now, if that worked, then what I should be able to do is to shift click and open multiple lines, or it blows up. Forget it. Nuke that. Anyways, this will print the item that was selected. And if there had been multiple items selected, it would print them all. Object is not subscriptable. Punt on that as well. So print the length of the items, right? Is that going to work? Is it going to tell us whether We have no items in the list. All right, so 0. Okay, so if the length of the items is greater than 0, then we're going to try to open it. So if length of items greater than 0, what did I just type there? If length of items, end parentheses, greater than 0, colon, then let's get the file name out. File name equals, well, we got to get the item number out. Item equals items subscript 0 in subscript. Let's print that out. I don't want to type in 20 lines and not have it working because it was working before I started trying to make it handle multiple selections. All right, that's working. Then now that we have an item number, we can get that out. So file is equal to, I don't like doing variables that are plural and singular, and I already did that here. I'm going to try to do that, avoid that here, and just do f is equal to files subscript item. Let's print that out, make sure that's working. It's working. Now, how do we open our file? We have a launch file function. Remember our good old launch file function from up here. Where'd it go? Run process, that's what it's called. So down here, way down here, inside our open click, run underscore process with that file name. And it worked. It opened our PDF. Now, what if you wanted to append an item to the list or remove it? Well, appending to the list is just a matter of calling your listbox control.append. So this is dumb, but I think what I'm going to do is to delete the item that was selected. Actually, I think I may just about leave that there, because you could always Google up how to delete items from this list or append items to this list if you wanted. Honestly, the fastest way to do it would probably be to have a function that would rebuild the list box based on the file list, right? So define rebuild file list, colon, and then we would need to set, do we want our data sorted? It may already be sorted, but files.sort, parentheses, in parentheses, and then file list dot set equal to our new list, right? Whatever we changed. And so we could delete that item from the list and then call rebuild file list. So delete file subscript item to remove it from the list, and then call rebuild file list. Now, would you really want to delete everything that you launched? I don't know, but this is just for funsies. If I click that and do open files, it removed it from the file list. Sure seemed to have done something else too, right? Seems to have opened it up to a lot of things other than PDFs. Why would that be? Did I not? Oh, that's why. The asterisk .pdf. So there's our PDF. We clicked on it, it removed it. Let's close another one, open it. All right. So I think it maybe wasn't sorted the first time we ran it, and then sorting it the second time makes it look unfamiliar. Is that what's going on? Yeah, it's not sorted to begin with, so I should have sorted it right to begin with. In which case, before I set my files, I'm adding a line here called files.sort right here. Just added that. All right, now they are sorted. And when we click it, it removes it. And I do wish that we'd had the ability to select them all, but we don't. I think we've taken this example far enough. I want to add some comments down here. What do we have to do? We don't need a print message anymore. Don't need that print message anymore. Get row number selected in Listbox. That's what that's doing. Were any rows selected? Get the first element. Get the file name from the list. I think I'll change that to get the row number. Get the file name from the list, open that file with the os, remove this item from the file list, and then recreate Listbox based on modified file list. All right, what do we think? Are these cool or not? Another one that you might want to look into is called the combo box. What's a combo box? Instead of looking like this, where it pops up the entire list, it's just one line long, but when you click it, it does the drop-down menu business, right? To where you select which one you want. And so drop-down menus are kind of cool. They're called combo boxes, but you can do them in Python. And the implementation is not going to be much different than our list box was. See, choose your favorite month, and you click that and it would display it, right? So if you feel like learning how to do a combo box rather than a list box like I just did there, and that might have been a good thing to do. Maybe I should have done that rather than the list box. I was playing with making an operating system browser to where it would list, you know, a list of directories, and you can double click on it and you can double click on another one. Anyways, so what do you do there? You create a values list, and then you create a combo box based on that values list. And it looks like they're not even doing a string as a temporary variable. Could I have done that? Could I have made this, instead of saying list var, could I have just done values equals files and then have it build it without having make the interim list? I don't know. I'm just curious. I'm going to undo that change almost immediately. Yep. That did not work, but apparently it works for, anyways, Google up Python combo box if you want to make pop-up menus like that. All righty, gang. Are there any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording and make that Dropbox, and we can hang out after class for a little while.
No questions.
All right. Let me pause the recording. or stop the recording.